I'm a white British man, about 60, approaching 60 from above, I think I've decided I'll say. So I've got, my eyes are described as blue in my passport, so let's stick with that. Close cropped hair and a little bit of stubble, and some frameless glasses, a little bit of silver down the sides. And I'm in the Norfolk countryside in a churchyard, so you can see trees in the background and a couple of gravestones. Hello. What a beautiful day. My name is Vince Laws. I'm a poet, an artist, sometimes a campaigner for disability rights, a performer. Sometimes perform poetry, and I thought I would start to put together a film about a very queer King Lear and my processes and how far I've got. And so I studied King Lear at school, so that's going back to the 1970s. And in 2018 I was funded by Unlimited to put on a play which I wrote and put on with community participants in Norwich. But suffice to say, I was interested in theatre, interested in performance. I was offered the opportunity to do a 10-week course online, 1 day a week, which was run by Grey Eye Theatre and 1623 Theatre. And 1623 Theatre, their slogan, as it were, is Shakespeare and social justice. And they ran a course called Let Me Be. And on that course, what we did is we chose a character from one of Shakespeare's plays, and we wrote to that character and began a dialogue, because the next week we wrote back as if from that character, and so on. And I chose King Lear. In the lockdown, I had been developing a comedy character called Boris Piffle Johnson, based on a former Prime Minister. It was my way of maintaining some kind of sanity during lockdown.
Hello everyone, and good evening. Thank you for being here. Thank me for being here. Audio description. I look a lot like the last bloke, but with shorter hair, wearing a black suit, as you can see. It's cardboard, tied at the neck with a big blue bow, and I have a portable podium with this week's slogans. Spiff, spaff, spoff. Bring back Boris. Never said that.
So I decided that I would be interested in seeing how I could fit that comedy character into King Lear. If Boris Piffle Johnson could somehow be King Lear's fool. And I was interested in King Lear, and I mean, I've suffered from anxiety and depression, and I felt some sort of affinity with, if you like, the madness of King Lear and the irrationality of some of his outbursts. And at the end of the course, 1623 Theatre asked me if I would be interested in developing that a queer King Lear, if they got funding. And so this year, in 2023, they got funding, because this year is the 400th anniversary of the First Folio, Shakespeare's First Folio, which was a collection of plays put together by some of his friends that he worked with, players. And 1623 had this, I think, great idea of getting about 30 artists, I think, to queer different plays that Shakespeare wrote in sort of celebration. And yeah, so from my point of view, I liked the idea and I was curious about it. So yes, I wanted to develop that further and see what I could come up with. And I started off by thinking that Boris Piffle Johnson was writing a book about Shakespeare, which he called Improving Shakespeare, because I felt that was the kind of title Boris Johnson himself might arrogantly choose if he were to write a book about Shakespeare. As it happens, the real Boris Johnson is writing a book, or has been paid £500,000 advance to write a book about Shakespeare. So this is based in some truth.
The more literary-minded among you will know that I'm a huge fan of the bard. I've been bard a few times myself, and that's another story.
And so for a while I was working on an idea where Boris Piffle Johnson was launching this new book called Improving Shakespeare, and giving a kind of lecture, and maybe he'd be saying, next slide please, and up would come a picture of King Lear, and maybe some of those characters would come to life. And that was going quite successfully, and there's definitely an idea there that I could use. But I wondered if I could be a little bit more ambitious. So I started to wonder what Shakespeare would be writing if he were alive today, and if he were to look back on King Lear and consider such things as the divine right to rule. We've just had King Charles III crowned, and this idea that some people are born to be our superiors and rule above us, and they have this divinity within them. I was interested in this because I read about King James the First of England and Sixth of Scotland, who was on the throne in 1606 when King Lear was first performed at his court. So he was one of the first people to see it, and he had written a book on how to be a king, what it meant to be a king, how you were above ordinary people, and yes, you were close to being divine. You were closer to being divine than ordinary people. And how that made him behave and how that affected his behaviour, and then thinking how that might affect King Lear's behaviour, and to the present day thinking how that might influence the current king's behaviour. So yes, I thought that was an interesting topic, relevant topic now and a relevant topic then. But yeah, so I've been thinking about that, King Lear, King James. I wanted to use Shakespeare himself as a character. I wanted to use King James as a character because he was notoriously, infamously bisexual and had male lovers who he lavished with gifts of titles and property and what have you. So that was quite divisive amongst other members of the nobility. The bit about King Lear that I've always found interesting, I think, is when he asks his three daughters, which of you loves me most? And invites a kind of flattery competition for them. Whoever flatters him the most is going to supposedly get the best part of the kingdom, which he's dividing in three between the three of them. And his two older daughters play the game and flatter him wildly and get a third each. And the youngest daughter refuses to play the game and she has nothing to say, which he takes very badly and has a huge tantrum about. and banishes her from his kingdom. So this idea that a father might ask his three children, which of you loves me most? And maybe one of the children or all the children could ask him which of them he loves most. I just find it a very strange question, and I think it indicates that he's perhaps already not rational. Although, of course, things change over the years, and maybe it was a different time. So, yeah, those are the things that I find interesting. So now I've got King Lear, I've got his three daughters, I've got King James, I've got Boris Piffle Johnson, and I've got William Shakespeare. And Shakespeare, I decided I'm interested in artificial intelligence and what does that mean and how that might play out in the future. So I developed a character who is 98% William Shakespeare. As if there are, well, maybe it will happen one day, who knows, but I've pretended that he has been developed. This new avatar of William Shakespeare called Will AI Am Shakespeare has been developed in Great Britain by Great British Boffins, as Boris would tell you. And he has the ability to time travel. So he travels back to 1606, takes Boris Piffle Johnson with him, and a theatre full of people, you lot, and they go back to 1606 and arrive just as King Lear is being performed in front of King James. So, in summary, I've got 7 characters. Some are real-life people, if you like Shakespeare himself, Boris Johnson, King James, and then I've got 4 characters from King Lear himself and his 3 daughters, Goneril, Regan, and Cordelia. And I've been exploring their interactions and, yes, putting them together and making them have conversations together and seeing where that takes me and devising a plot. And I have an ending that I am working towards and that I like. I'm interested in queering King Lear, both in the sense of it being queer, as in weird, odd, strange, a queer tale, and in the sense of it being less heterosexual, making some of the characters other than heterosexual. So King Lear himself, part of the reason why he's so angry and unhappy is he's in the closet and has been all his life and has struggled with that due to the homophobia of his father. So I've invented a whole backstory to justify his supposed madness. And many people think Shakespeare himself was bisexual, but in my version he is an avatar, and so he is binary in the sense that he has no gender, no genitals, no libido, and he is made up of code, or they are made up of code, so they are binary. And in my version, Cordelia prefers to be they, them, and now called Elia. And the struggles that they have with that due to other people's resistance, I felt that was a relevant story to explore in today's society. I enjoy absurdist humour, so late in the day I've added another character, an 8th character, who is Priapus, who is a 2,500-year-old Greek god. and his defining feature is that he has an enormous penis, so large that he has to push it ahead of him in a wheelbarrow. And I feel there's some humour and things to explore there. So I have him visiting the doctors with a bad back and at the job centre trying to get a job. And he comes on and delivers bawdy limericks. And yes, I've thought he would be an interesting character to interact with the others I've already chosen. So those are the main characters that I'm working with, and I'm writing a play that I would enjoy seeing. I want it to be accessible so that you don't have to know King Lear, Shakespeare's King Lear, to enjoy my play. But my play will be very Vince flavoured, with comedy, contemporary references, silliness, of course some serious undertones, quotes, misquotes, props. I think this gives you a flavour of what I am creating with a very queer King Lear. So thanks to 1623 Theatre for commissioning me. Thanks to Unlimited, who have given me a development bursary to, amongst other things, make film and document my work. If you are interested, there's a Facebook page, A Very Queer King Lear.